at 15, I started shooting up meth. And that's where everything really changed. And then it just went down a completely different road. We had so much trafficking going on in that area.
Yeah.
And I was just good at it. You know, we had biker gangs and ex-Vietnam vets. Those guys were heavy cats, you know. I mean, they were the real deal. And I grew up with those guys. I was into it. And I went all in. So being right there on the border with Mexico, and the town that I grew up in was a distribution point. So everything came from Mexico and it stopped there. And then it went out from Texas. I was right in the middle of all that. It's a very violent lifestyle. It's a very destructive lifestyle. Thing that you wrestle with the most in life. You can't erase the memories. I think the real demons in life are your memories. You can get clean. You can be rehabilitated. You can start another life. There is hope. But all that stuff up there, you know, it stays with you. And I think I wrestle with that more than anything else.
مرحبا هلا والله. في هذه الحلقة مستضيف لكم مستر قاري. كان مدمن يعني مخدرات والحمد لله متعافي، ولكن الأجمل أو المثير في القصة إنه هو كمان كان مهرب للمخدرات وواحدة من أخطر العصابات الموجودة في أمريكا واللي تتعامل مع الكارتيل في المكسيك. الجميل في الموضوع إنه بعد ما تعافى وظفته الحكومة المكسيكية لحتى يساعد يعني العصابة نفسها أو العصابات بشكل عام يتعافوا من المخدرات. خليه يحكي لنا قصته ونترككم مع مستر قاري. قصة مثيرة جدا. Hi, how are you doing, Mr. Gary?
I'm doing good, Syed. Thank you.
Welcome to Jordan. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation today.
Yes.
So today we have a special guest, Mr. Gary, and he is actually now a counselor, addiction counselor. He's been doing a lot of help for the communities, Mexico and USA and all around the world. I met him by chance. I mean, I don't believe that it's chance. I think it's something that God.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's an interesting story. But it happened to be that you're living in Jordan for about a year and a half almost.
More or less, yes.
Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start from the beginning. First thing first. So I want to know about you, Gary, like since your childhood, how you started your addiction story itself, then the recovery, and so let's start from the beginning. Who's Gary?
Well, it started young. I think it does with a lot of people who have the deeper addictions. It seems to start a little young. I was like 13. I lived in a bad part of town, you know, so it was everywhere. So it just, I think from that moment, it just kind of grew from there. And within a short period of time, by the time I was 14, 15, there was just so much access. You know, growing up, I lived in South Texas, so it's right there by the border. So we had access to everything.
Yeah, tell me that.
And it got a hold of me at a young age and stayed with me for many years.
So what was the first substance, if you would like to say how? Because usually people, like especially young guys, and
yes.
They see all these rappers and they market all this smoke and weed and they don't know it's a trap. So can we know your story? Because I don't know it.
Yeah, you know, I remember when I was about 10, my dad had like, you know, bottles of like whiskey and vodka in the kitchen. I never knew what that was, you know, and at one point, like, you know, I grabbed one and ran off with it with my buddies. And to be honest with you, I really didn't care much for it. And I was never really that interested in it at first. But at about 13, that's when we started smoking weed. And I loved weed, just right away. And so, you know, it started from there. And then at about 14, when I went into high school, the alcohol showed up again. And then that was a different environment, you know, completely. And then I began to enjoy that, really. And then the coke and the meth and the acid and
one substance after
another.
Just,
you know, it was all available. And, you know, I never really felt that I was running from anything. I wasn't doing drugs for, like, to escape something. I liked it. I liked to get high. So I was very curious, and I liked everything I did, so I did everything. And at 15, I started shooting up meth. And that's where everything really changed. And then it just went down a completely different road. And so then I was shooting up everything. You know, if you could shoot it up, I was shooting it up. Heroin was never really my thing. I did it, but it just really wasn't where I wanted to go. And that stayed with me for many, many years, you know, until it broke me, you know. So it, you know, it's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time. It's interesting. I think that's good, you know, to go back and reflect on that a little bit. You know, I look at things now
differently,
and what, you know, what has happened as a result of all that. I don't advise anyone, you know, going through something like that to get to a place where you can do good. But I do see where, you know, there is hope on the other end of it. You know, you can be really deep into that and come out of it. You know, the thing that I think really that took everything to another level is we had so much trafficking going on in that area.
Yeah.
And I was just good at it.
Trafficking, you mean?
And I just, at a young age, you know, that was back a long time ago, you know, and we had a lot of, you know, we had biker gangs and ex-Vietnam vets. And those guys were heavy cats, you know. I mean, they were the real deal. And I grew up with those guys. You know, these days, I got older, I'm soft, you know, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But at that point in time, there was such an opportunity to have things that the average person couldn't have by what that lifestyle would bring for you. And I was into it, and I went all in. So being right there on the border with Mexico, and the town that I grew up in was a distribution point. So everything came from Mexico, and it stopped there, and then it went out from Texas. So I was right in the middle of all that. And I stayed with that for a very, very long time. And it's a very violent lifestyle. It's a very destructive lifestyle. And, you know, something that I tell everybody is I think the thing that you wrestle with the most in life, coming out of, you know, a heavy addiction, especially a destructive addiction, if, you know, you can't erase the memories. I think the real demons in life are your memories. You know, you can get clean and you can, you know, you can be rehabilitated. You can start another life. There is hope. But all that stuff up there, you know, it stays with you. And I think I wrestle with that more than anything else as far as residual from that lifestyle, because I'm, you know, I've been clean 20 years. But those memories, you know, they're still in there, man.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you don't want that. You know, I don't want that thought. But you can't erase it.
Yeah, for sure. So let me continue with the story when you were 15. So you told me you start shooting up. Did you finish high school? Did you move to college? Or after high school you actually couldn't, so you went into trafficking and all that? So how did you manage?
Yeah, you know, I came from like a middle-class family. And by the time I was finishing high school, I was making more money than my dad was.
Because of trafficking? Okay.
And I really had no reason
to continue your college. Yeah.
I considered it.
Okay, so
career,
you went deep into doing your own stuff, whether it's using or trafficking. But I think it's something really bad about trafficking itself. It makes you want to use more drugs because you want to run away from the anxiety and the depression or whatever. Because by that time you don't know what you're going through, but you think you're strong. You think you have it all. Do you mind if we get into a little bit about trafficking? I want to know stories because I hear like this Mexico gangs, all these gangs on the border. Like, can you tell me how it all started? Like, what you guys used to do back in the days? I know it's been how many? Maybe
that was back in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, you're talking 40, 50 years.
I'm 59. So that's
40 years ago, yeah.
wow.
Almost.
That makes me feel old, man.
You're still young.
The years, they go by quickly. Yeah, I think it was mainly just the environment of the area that I lived in. It was just, I think you become a product of your environment when that's what's available. My family was very traditional. My parents were just normal people. They didn't, overly abuse us or anything. I don't have, no excuses there. I think what I was interested in is just an adrenaline junkie, really. Like adrenaline is one of the most powerful drugs out there. And I was really driven by that and the power that comes with it, because it puts you in a place that you can only get to that way. This is really interesting. Like I said, I hadn't thought about, those days much. There's an allure there. Well, you see it these days. It's still here. It's still the same thing. Everybody wants the money. They want the power. They want they want the bling. They want all that. There's an allure there that if you've got that in you, that where you want that, and you're willing to do what it takes to get that, you will do those things. And especially at a young age, you don't have like a check and balance inside of you. You don't have any wisdom yet. So that's the thing to do. And I was surrounded by guys that were living that way, so I really didn't have any other influence around me. So I just went down that road. You get drawn in by it.
So you used to be in charge for example, once you started, like, how big did you get into that? And I mean, I don't know if that could be like something that bring you some trouble right now. I think it's
I'm not running from anybody. Everybody that I would have to worry about's dead. So I don't have really that issue anymore. The thing is, I don't want to encourage anyone. Mm-hmm. You can give your testimony sometimes, and even though you're giving it in somewhat of a negative context, there are those out there that are listening to that they're drawn to that.
Yeah.
So I'm always really cautious about, the extent of my testimony. I'd rather talk about
the good part,
where it came, what it ended up being. But because that's the way it was with me. Like I would sit around with all those biker guys and those ex-Vietnam vets, and I would listen to them talk about it, and it'd be like, that's what I want. So I'm really cautious about, your words are seeds. So I'm really cautious about, I don't want to make it like glamorous.
Yeah.
Because it's not glamorous. It's very attractive in the beginning, but once you get into the midst of it, and you start losing friends, and you've got a serious addiction that, I never had to buy anything. It was everywhere. We were living like rock stars. So it's, I don't want to perpetuate that. I don't want to sow that into somebody. So, how about this? I'll put it like this. It's available. You can go there. You can do it. There's no future.
Yeah.
All the guys that I know that stayed with it longer than I did, they're all dead, or they're in prison, and they'll die in prison. You have to wake up and decide one day, it's not who you want to be when you're 21. It's who do you want to be when you're 59.
Exactly.
So you have to kind of look into the future on that, I think.
All right. I think I have one take on the American movies, especially like they use. I do have stories about this. Maybe in my YouTube channel, I talked about my addiction recovery, but I didn't get into more than that because I'm still like recovered for 5 years only, so there's still some stories could be told later on, not right now. But I do feel you. I do like see a huge part with Hollywood movies in general. Like they do like a glamorous around drug dealing from Colombia, Pablo Escobar, and all that crap. I can see that because back in the days, I see like, oh my God, I used to be addicted to watching any series, any movies regarding trafficking, cocaine, like drugs trafficking, or selling drugs and like all the violence around it, because they make you feel like they're the bosses, you know, they have the power and they're really strong. But if you look at the end of it, all of them either died in a really young age, or they've been like all their families suffered because of that. Especially the families, the one that love them the most, they're the one that really pay the bills. Usually they are the one who gonna suffer the most. So okay, let's not talk about details, but how did that lead you to more usage of a drug? Let's say you start using when you were 13, 14, became shooting. You start shooting when you were 15, and then it took you till 35, like 20 years, 25 years. How long did you stay?
I had a wreck in 1996 where, and I died in that wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought me back.
Mm-hmm.
And everything really changed at that point. Up to that point, it was full bore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you start out doing that, you're doing it because I enjoyed it. When a deep addiction, once it sets in and it's got you, and it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
You're not doing it because you want to, you're doing it because you have to. And that's a different buzz. Most people, once they get to that point, it's made such a heavy imprint on your psychology and your person that even if you do shake that, you'll always carry some little piece of that with you. There's little pieces of that I still carry, you know, that, you know, sometimes my sister will tell me, oh man, that's like, what is that? And I don't even know that I'm doing it. Most of that is gone from me now, you know, but you still carry, you know, I'll give you an example. For the longest time, when I had no reason, I never slept without a weapon, ever. And it took me, after that wreck, it took me 15 years before I spent the first night where I slept without a weapon. And I didn't get any sleep. And something simple like that I would never go to bed without a weapon. And multiple weapons in the house, different places. And then I started traveling with all of this in 2010. And when I left, the first place I went was New York. And I couldn't take the gun with me.
Yeah.
So the first night that I slept without a weapon was in New York in a bad neighborhood. You know, and I could hear everything going on out there. And it makes such a heavy imprint on you that little things like that will follow you around. I have no need for that. I have no need for that weapon. But sometimes I still feel like I need it.
Mm-hmm. Till now?
It creeps in from time to time, you know?
Uh-huh.
It really does. I don't think like that anymore, but every now and then it will creep in there. You know, just little things like that. You know, daily use of any chemical, excessive use, will make a mark on you in different ways. And to the degree and the length of time that you stay with it will determine how much you destroy what little we have up here, you know. Some people never come back from it. I had a lot of buddies who, especially heroin addicts, I see this in heroin addicts. They, after an extended period of time, there is a mental aspect that I don't really see them come back from. There's just something gets rewired in there that doesn't seem to be able to be fixed. So, you know, anyone that's listening to this, if you're starting out on this road and you're having fun and you're enjoying it, just remember that these are powerful chemicals, powerful mind-altering drugs that are making readjustments in your person. It's changing the person who you are. And some of those things, once you get clean and get away from it, some of those things will drift away over time. Some of them will not. They will stay with you. You know, in the moment, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't seem to be as important. When you get older, and hopefully that's behind you, you know, then you have, you know, a marriage and family and kids and job and all that to deal with, and you got this little glitch in you that you can't shake. And that's really what I focus on. Is I like having the ones that are really broken. You know, most people that go into a rehab, they go into detox so they can get all clean 100% and go back out and hit it hard. They have no intention in quitting. They just need a break, and they're going to get clean, and they're going to go right back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I like having the people who are, you know, they don't know which way to go with it.
They hit rock bottom, as you say.
You know, that because that person is willing to listen.
Yeah, yeah.
I work with anybody. You know, that's the thing. I work with anybody. I work with all different levels. But I really, truly, I enjoy, because I remember what it was like for me. So I know that place. And if you don't know that place, you can only help that person so much. You can't go through the manual and help somebody. You have to have that experience. You can only do so much if you don't. And I figure, you know, if I have that experience and that understanding, I might as well do something good with it, because I destroyed other people's lives for so long. I can't change that, but at least now I understand all of that. So I might as well do what I can now in the moment. And I like having people who they're at the end of their rope. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to fix it. I can work with that.
I like your mindset, like, because we do have, I think you're also a practicing Christian. You kind of religious. I'm a practicing Muslim too. We do have something really nice in religion about God. We do have something in Quran, one verse. It's the translation of it is like, whatever you did like bad in the past, if you pass through that, if you quit it like for real, and then you did something to fix the things that you've done, like used to hurt people, now you're helping them. God will even turn all the bad deeds that you did into good deeds. And think about, like, you're doing 20 years of helping now, and think about the 25 years that you did with the trafficking, selling, or whatever you did for people. It's actually all turned into something good. You get it as an experience, you get it as an energy, you get it as a... I do believe this is the only, like, I read the Quran like many times, but when I was in my recovery at the beginning, I read that verse and I was like, it hit me. Like, oh my God, like, people won't forgive you, but God not only will forgive you, He will turn everything bad into good. Yeah. So if you've done really bad stuff, this one is for you. So God is giving you even a gift. If you want to take it, maybe other people won't have it. That's what. But I want to close the chapter about your recovery. I just want to know, when did you decide that you want to quit, and what happened? How did you do it? Because I'm living in Texas too. I moved to New York recently, but I'm in Dallas, so I understand the streets. Maybe I don't know about South Texas. I need to visit your town maybe if you were there. And I know it's tough. Family trying to help you, but you know, our countries, our society is different. They're like connected and they can help more, and they put so much pressure on you.
Yeah.
So how did you decide that? Like, what moved you into the recovery after all these years, 25 years of using?
I woke up in ICU.
Mm-hmm.
Woke up in a hospital.
Overdose? ODs?
I'd had a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
I died out there. And they brought me back. And I don't, thank God I don't remember any of it. I don't remember the wreck. I don't remember any of it. But I woke up in the hospital, like, all hooked up. And it's a funny thing, because even now when I think about it, for a couple of months before that, I knew something was coming. because my wife and I had just divorced, and I was like, if I'm going to do this, now's the time to do it. I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to go do what I need to do and set myself up and go move down somewhere in Mexico on the beach and get old, And I made it 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And had that wreck, woke up in the hospital. But I remember when I woke up in the hospital, there was a peace that came on me, because it was like I knew, okay,
I'm done.
Like ICU is a horrible place, because everybody in there is screaming, and it's a really intense place. And I don't remember much of it, but I remember when I woke up, just all these people screaming. And I had this peace, like I knew it was over. I didn't know why. And I remember just laying there in that bed, and my sister walked in. She was crying, and I looked up at her and I was like, "How bad is it?" And she's like, "It's bad." And that's all I remember. And I passed out. And then that started a process of, I was broken up. I had a lot of surgeries and a lot of time in the hospital. And so that started a process of, a lot of time to think. And it separated me from everything, because I was completely unable to do it. I was in a wheelchair for 3 months. I was busted up. And so I had a lot of time to think, and my head was clear. And I wasn't partying. I wasn't doing anything. So my detox was basically in the hospital. But they had me hooked up to the machine. I had morphine on demand. All I had to do was just hit the button. So, and morphine was never really my thing. But then I had that.
You liked
it,
yeah.
Yeah, so that was something new, So when I got out of the hospital, I had to kind of deal with that. But that was easy because I really wasn't into it. But by the time all that passed, my detox was fairly easy. The problem was when I started feeling better and was able to get around, I wanted to get back in it. But there was something that happened when I woke up in that hospital room. It was like, this got to change. This has got to change. And I just kind of started down that road. And like you were saying, at that time, I started really thinking a lot about the next life. Because the police told me when they found me I was dead. And the ambulance guys hit me with adrenaline and brought me back. So I started really thinking, man, if I'd have lost it right there, what was waiting for me, And I began to give that a lot of thought. And so I started heading down that road. And I never really stopped with that. God became really real to me in a powerful way. And I was healed from things that the doctor said was just impossible. That I was never supposed to be able to walk completely again, ride a bicycle, run, none of that. And
yeah, right.
I'm still, I'm not like what I was before, but way beyond what they said I should be able to. And so I began, studying the book and really approaching faith from a balanced standpoint. And I found something. And that took a hold of me and brought me out of all of it. And that's really, for me, I'm not a salesman, that's just what I found. And I began to apply that in my life on a serious level. And I never stopped. And that ministry down there in Mexico was very interesting, because I saw miracles on almost a daily basis.
So you were in Mexico once all this happened?
No, this happened in '96. Mexico was
later on stage.
2016. Yeah.
Okay.
All of this really, I was always kind of doing some form of rehabilitation, you know, in some way.
Yeah.
It just always kind of found me. In 2010 was when
You got it.
it really opened up and started to become a reality.
So let me get this right. So first of all, you mean 1996? This was the last time you have used? No, you continued. 2010 was the last time.
No, I had, once I got out of the hospital, well, I picked up a low level opioid
Yeah, it's like
addiction
a
in the
medication.
hospital.
Yeah, okay.
So I had to kick that, which was ugly, but it was easier than I thought it would be. And then I got my life in order. You know, I put everything away. I got away from the business. And, you know, the crazy thing is you know, I'm a big believer in prayer, man. I got some powerful stuff. And the guys that I was dealing with, they were heavy guys. And you don't just walk away from that. And so I began really praying about that. You know, I said, you know, I don't know what to do with this. And
they wanted to hunt you, like they were.
Well, this is the thing, you know, is long story short, you know, I knew them really well, but there's limits on that, you know. You don't just walk away from that. I'm not trying to make it dramatic or anything. It's just the way that it is. So I began really praying about that, and within a short period of time, all those guys were dead. And there was nobody. Only one guy. Or two guys. No, only one. And I didn't have anything to worry about with him. He was low man. So then I was free. And it's like when that burden was taken off of me, it was like I don't have to look over my shoulder. I'm loose. So I really grabbed a hold of that new chapter. I said, man, I've got a golden opportunity right here. I'd be a fool to go back to this. And I did pretty good for a while, and then, you know, it creeps back in. It's like, I'll just go, you know, I'm just going to do a little blow this weekend. Then it's 3 days, then it's 4 days. So I would binge a little bit, and then I would be like, man, I can't do this. And then I wouldn't do anything for months. And then I would binge, or I would drink, and then I would do blow, and it would just, you know.
Back and forth.
Yeah, but it wasn't like excessive in the beginning. But I got to where I didn't really enjoy it. You know what I mean? I wanted to be clean because I liked the way I was living. So that took a couple of years. And then about 2000, I guess, 2001, it just left me. I was really praying a lot about it. And I said, man, take this thing from me. I don't want this. And it just kind of drifted away. It's still there. The opportunity's still there. I still have thoughts from time to time, but it's just not
Okay.
where I'm at.
You actually touched on a really important point because I'm working out, like a lot of people reaching out for me from YouTube or whatever, and they have some similar stories, maybe especially with dealing, like drug dealing, you know. They always, sometimes they want to get clean, but the guys are still after them. Maybe some of them like are just, and because of that process, like the early time of recovery, people, they don't think straight.
Right.
They think like, okay, I cannot go away, or I can. But I think I do agree. Like being with God and faith and prayer is like has a huge thing to do with, especially with those cases, because sometimes you think you're stuck, especially if you cannot leave the country or like your family are around, so you're afraid or you're scared there might something happen to your family and all that. So you touched on a really good point, because I think all the keys are with God. I do believe that, because He can show you some ways how to do it. So let's move on to other part of your story. When you start helping people, I knew also, because I sat down with you before we had a talk that morning, and you told me about you started even helping the government in Mexico to help the cartel in prison to recover from addiction or try to change their life. It's a very interesting story. I like the way that you mentioned stuff, especially about meth. I really want to mention it because in our countries we don't really speak about this because it's a taboo, so we don't get into that stories. Because I want to touch down on this first, then we can move how you're helping and what's your approaches and some success stories that you've been through. And first of all, tell me about the meth trafficking that those cartel are doing, the curse, because I believe the crystal meth especially has a different, it's a different drug than any other drug. They call it, even in our countries, it's a devil drug.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's famous also in the States. So can you tell us the stories, because you know what happens backstage, how they cook this shit, how they make it, and how they smuggle it?
You know, back in the day when I was moving it, you know, it was you could make the cheap stuff, but you had to have a lab, you know, to really do it right. And that was basically, it was pure, it was pharmaceutical grade. I mean, these guys were using formulas that, you know, it was the real deal.
Yeah.
You could cook up the bathtub stuff, but there just wasn't a market for it. It was what you did when you couldn't find anything else. The ice that we have, the stuff that we have now, you know, they smoke it. You know, back then, everybody was shooting it. You know, it takes a lot more dedication to put a needle in your arm than it does to fire up a pipe. Anybody can fire up a pipe.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that's, to me, is the deadly part of it, because it is easier to ingest. You know, if you can smoke a cigarette, you can smoke a pipe. You know, when crack came on the scene back in the day, nobody was smoking it, you know. We were either shooting it or putting it up our nose. That's it. And then I remember when it got into a smokable form, it just
blowed up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, ice did the same thing, but it's a different product. You know, it's still chemically the same, somewhat. But that stuff they can make using whatever they can get their hands on, and it's some bad stuff. And I heard stories down there, like it was really interesting to get down into Mexico and get into the heart of that on the production level, and to see really what goes on there and how it affects the guys. You know, it is a different drug, a very different drug. It breeds in the human, it breeds a desire to fight and a desire to kill. There's something in there that it's just that way. It opens up things that other drugs don't open up. Very different. Now, I remember, you know, I did it every day for years. And the only time I wasn't doing it was when I was, you know, eating a handful of Valiums and going to sleep. But I'd sleep for 2 days, and then I'd get up and protein smoothie and a baked potato and off to the races. This stuff is like, it's so cheap. I mean, these guys can get, you know, $5 rocks.
And it's really strong, yeah.
And it's very strong. The thing that I saw down there that really got my attention the most was when I went into the first facility that I went into. I wanted to know, you know, what am I dealing with? You know, who's doing what?
Mm-hmm.
And 80 to 90% of it was ice. Had virtually no cocaine usage, very little heroin usage, and alcohol. It was ice and alcohol. But 80% of the guys that were in there were doing ice. So you think about what that does to the human. You know, drinking's bad enough, but, you know, you drink and pass out and you're done. That stuff, now you're up all night, you're up all day, you're up all night, and they're just smoked up and doing whatever. And so it really puts a burden on the street level for law enforcement. And that's what I really started seeing is like, you know, if you can reduce that, you take the burden off of law enforcement and it makes it safer for the public. Well, Mexico's not a safe place anyway at all. So that just really adds to it. Then you throw in the whole trafficking aspect of that country and you increase it to where everybody's up 24/7, smoked up, out of their minds. And it's, these guys, they all want to be a hitman. They all want to kill somebody. And I noticed that consistently as I started counseling these guys. I started noticing that all of them wanted to kill another human. And I didn't remember hearing like that being so consistent with other drugs. Like these guys, they want to get smoked up and go kill humans. And that's a different place. That's a spiritual issue right there. And that's what I started noticing, where my faith and the power that I had in the spirit was the answer. Counseling can only go so far. 12-step program can only go so far. You have to get in on that level where the problem really is, and the problem is a spiritual problem. And so I believe that addiction is not a physical issue. It's a spiritual issue. The physical part of the addiction is just an outward manifestation of a spiritual problem. So you can do the physical work. You can detox. You can, all of the different techniques that we have. You can do all of that. But that spiritual issue, if you don't heal that, you're just cleaning a dirty cup and putting it back on the street. It's really all you're doing.
Yeah.
When I saw that, that's where I really started having my eyes open to, hey, the reason that we have a 70% failure rate in rehabilitation programs in the States is because we're not touching the place that is the root of the problem.
Mexico.
It's a spiritual issue. The 12-step program, you have to have a power that's, you attach yourself to a higher power. And if that power is a tree, then for you it's a tree. If it's a rock, it's a rock. If it's your grandmother, it's your grandmother. If it's God, if it's Buddha, if it's whatever, you find that. Well, there is some truth to that. But I saw a lot of people do that and not get rehabilitated. So I started seeing that gap in the programs of all they're really doing is they're detoxing them. They're trying to build up their self-confidence, and they're pushing them out the door. And they go out, and in the States, 70% are either using or back in rehab within 6 months. And of the 30% that aren't, within 1 year, 20% of those. So it's a very high failure rate, because I believe it's something so deep in the individual, in the human, that there's an area we're not touching. And so that's where I started changing things. That's where I went. I started going down that road. And that's where I started seeing the changes, was when I took it to a different level. Yeah.
That's nice. I want to touch down a little bit about how the witches, they're cursing, because I believe there's something devil about the myth. I want to close that chapter. But I just want to really explain for people how this is made and how this is moved from a country to country, and how this is literally cursed by some witches. And
that's it's exactly my point. Is the root of the problem is a spiritual issue, and the people don't realize that a lot of what they're getting, they don't know where that came from and what was going on, getting it from point A to point B. Back in the day, they used to just make it and ship it. They bring these very, very powerful, and if you don't believe in these things, it's only because you haven't seen it. Once you see it, and once you are there taking part in it and watching this happen and listening to these guys talking about what they've seen and done, it changes everything radically. And they've got these guys that they're in there, they're cooking everything up, and they have all the cartels have resident witches that work with them. And these are very powerful, dark people. And so while they're cooking all this stuff up, they have someone who's going around and cursing it. So as if the drug itself isn't bad enough, it's carrying this thing with it. And you're not aware of it. The things that I heard, what they saw with their own eyes, It was just kind of hard to believe, actually, in the beginning. But I knew that it was true. Mexico's a very dark place. I got a lot of good friends down there, beautiful people. But there is an aspect of that culture that is ancient and has been into worship of darkness for thousands of years. It's in the land. Like, there's people all around the world that go to this area that I was in to study with very high-level witches there, very powerful occultic people. Because there's something different about that area, and they go there to learn how to multiply their power. Because they say when you go to this area, you can be stronger because there's something resonant in that area. Territory.
Because they, as you said, they were worshiping Satan. They were like sacrificing innocent.
They're sacrificing kids, drinking blood, cutting humans up.
Have you seen that yourself?
I haven't gotten that close to it, and I'll tell you why, because I don't want to. And you only get that close to it if you're into it. You could never
go in.
And someone with me or someone like me who believes the way that I believe, they would never let me get that close to it. What I was dealing with was the guys who had been there, but like were in prison.
And they want to change.
And we got them healed. You know, they got healed, and we pulled that stuff out of them. You know, this is something, you know, maybe you can edit this later if you don't want it. I don't know if you guys want to go down this road or not, you know, to be honest with you. There is light and darkness on the earth. And if you deny that, you're blind. It's because you don't want to see it. And when you've seen it face to face, you start to realize how prevalent it is. It's on every level. It's everywhere. I don't live in fear of that, but I'm very much aware of what and who the enemy is in this place. And it's very, very real and has been since the beginning of time. These entities are immortal, very powerful. These guys have seen it. And when we pulled that out of them, it's wild to watch that because you can physically see that change. And the thing I think that is the most interesting about me is how I can tell that it really took, was you can see it in the eyes. The light comes on. The skin changes. The color of their skin changes right there in front of you. They look healthy. And there's a light that comes on in their eyes that I simply cannot explain. I cannot explain it. Once I started seeing this being very, very consistent, I started realizing this is how.
Yeah.
This is where we have to go in. This is what we have to do. This is why nothing else is working, because we're just treating the body. We're not getting the real stuff out that needs to come out. Well, when that started happening, you know, when you get delivered from something like that, that's removed from you, there is a radical change that happens in you, and you know something happened. And so these guys began telling me what was going on and what they had come out of. And that's where I really started learning a lot about that. And they took me to school, and I was more than willing. I wanted to understand it. And so they told me what they were doing, how they were doing it, how they were dealing.
They're teaching them the kids, yeah?
Yeah, they were going to school. I had a buddy that really good, actually he was a translator for me, really interesting story. He spent 8 years they have a demon down there called the Santa Muerte, which is, it's the devil. He can take many different forms. For most of them in the beginning, I would always ask them, was it a man or a woman? And the guys would always tell me, oh, it's a woman. She's beautiful. And says that she'll give me anything I want. And I said, okay, was this like in a dream or something like that? He's like, no, bro, look. Face to face. I heard that story 1,000 times from guys who don't know each other. Tell me exactly the same story. Like the other guy told me. Almost the same. So they would be drawn in by that. So what do you want? I want power, I want women, I want money, I want this, I want that. Okay, and it would happen. And they would all access that. But as time went on, they would always tell me she would get uglier and would ask more of them. And then they would start having to sacrifice for more power, and just it'd start that chain. So
usually they sacrifice blood, organs. Could be kids.
You know,
people.
some of them are, they're doing, doing chickens, they're doing animals. If you really, it depends on what you're after. That's the thing. If you're really willing to go down that road, it's there. And these guys, these are brutal human beings, that have no feeling, and they want what they want. So you take that and you combine that
with the
drug,
crystal meth,
and
that is cursed by witches.
You've just got this whole different ball game going. And what I started seeing was like, look, I can't change all that's going on. That's going to continue. But what I can do is I can deal with these guys, and as many who want to get out of this.
You can help them.
I can help them to get out of it. And what they did is then they would go back to their neighborhoods and their families, and they would share all that. And I taught them how to do that. I lost a lot of good guys, because sometimes the cartels would pick them up and kill them. So, I lost a lot of good friends down there. But it's I don't want the story to be
that's
completely
nice.
Heavy, like there is, there is a lighter side to it. But I think it's good that people hear this, because they need to know the reality of what is really going on out there, and don't.
And how bad is, even like for me, I'm focusing more about the crystal meth itself, like who is taking it, and like what actually, how bad it is. You see like those people, especially hitmen, like, because I've seen all the guys that start to abuse that, take that on a daily basis. They get into psychosis, and they start might kill some, or at least threaten their families, and like they do really, really aggressive stuff. So I totally understand. I just wanted to shine the light on that, how bad it is. But I live in the state. That's why even the state is safe compared to Mexico, but I still feel that I thank God for our countries that we didn't go that bad, Right. Sometimes I really pray for, like, I think you've been here in Jordan for a year or something. All what we have is like really small issues here and there, and which is people can tell, like, because when I moved to the States and I get around like what is happening in Latin America, like I was really like I want to carry my gun all the time. I want to do that. So I don't want to do that. I'm not that guy. Why I want to do this? Like I'm not praying only for those people in Mexico. I'm praying also for the people that, in USA or in the States that have been affected by cartels or all the drug dealing and all that stuff. Yeah. So I know there's a light because you are here. We are here actually, and we can't just change life. We can't change the darkness. We can just add more light to this universe. I think this is our mission from God. If you have something to really like to tell people who are watching us who are struggling from drugs and they really want to change and they are totally away from this spiritual side or whatever, like the real reason, to keep blaming things, or I mean, like what you could tell them, so that might really help them change or help them through the way.
Every person is different. And if you're already there, if you're already in a place that you don't want to be, at least where you are. You're already getting to a frame of mind of like you don't want to be in that place. So I don't wish that on anyone, but there is direction there. I don't know where to go, but I don't want to be here. So that's a step forward. For especially the younger ones, who this is appealing to them, and you're starting to look at these things and you're thinking about it. Nobody's going to be there to hold your hand to tell you, no, you shouldn't do that. You're going to have to make that. I don't care how old you are, 13 or 35 or 60. You just have to have the wisdom to step away from it. There is, all I can say is after all this time and with what I've seen, there is no future in it. And whatever is there temporarily, it's not worth it. If you're drawn to that and you feel like you can't help yourself, well, that's the truth. You can't. And that's why I believe that the spiritual aspect of it is so powerful, because you don't have the power to do it. You have to hook into something that will give you that power. And maybe I'll get a little religious on this, but I really enjoy the environment here being where we have Christian and Muslim communities side by side, and everybody is just respecting each other. And I love that. When I was in Mexico, it was the Catholic Church, and Catholicism is not Christianity. It's a completely different deal. And there was a lot of aggression there from the Catholic Church. So it's like, no matter where you go, you're going to run into that. What I tell people is, I went about as far as you could go with it, and I couldn't get myself out. And the power that I found in that book gave me the ability to get out, put me back on track, and put me where I am right now. I could have never gotten myself to this place by myself, of my own knowledge and understanding. Impossible. When I go in and I do, what I'm allowed to do, and I do it in the Spirit. And I'm talking from a biblical standpoint, not from
science-based.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that root of spiritual power. When I see what happens as a result of that, how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times do I have to see it before I know there's something there? And if you're in a place where you're trying to get out or you want to get out, I encourage you to do everything that you can to put that down, but you will find that to be consistently healed of it, it will take something that you do not possess. That power inside of you that you do not have needs to be put in there. And what I tell people is, do it old school, all right? Because I'm old school on this stuff. I'm not selling anything. I don't do that. Everybody has their space. But this is where I stand. This is where I sit. If you don't believe that there is a God and you don't believe that any of this is real, I dare you. Go into your room, shut the door, get on your knees in a humble way, because you are only a human, and ask him to show himself to you respectfully. And to me, that's bravery.
Yeah, for sure.
If you don't believe in any of that, I dare you, with your heart, honestly, say, if you're real, show me how you are real. Show me how to do this. Show me who you are. Reveal yourself to me, and do it respectfully, like you're speaking to your grandfather. Don't do it with an attitude. And he will show you.
I believe so. I think this is we're coming to the end of this. I do believe that God, praying to him, or like at least asking the help, even if you're away from him, if you don't believe or you have doubts, is the way to start things, because he will guide you on what to do. For sure, you need to add your lifestyle, your healthy things with it. That's something he asks from you too. But first of all, you have to be humble enough to believe, to start this way. Thank you so much, Gary, for this time that you've given us.
Thank you very much.
We enjoyed this interview, and welcome to Jordan again. We're very happy to have you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.